Between Marvel Spider-Man and the Batman Arkham series are some of the best superhero games ever made, only confirmed by my recent poll. Today's versus video will be between Batman Arkham Knight and Marvel Spider-Man. Why these two specifically over say Arkham City or Miles Morales, you may ask? I felt Arkham Knight would be a more interesting base to compare against some of the competition I had in mind due to its console generation and release year, and then from there I made a poll where Spider-Man won, so here we have it. The more I've thought about it, these games are pretty perfect competitors for this matchup. Arkham Knight has the advantage of being Rocksteady's third installment, while Spider-Man being 3 years newer benefits from the lessons learned by games before it. I will be comparing these two games across 7 different categories, which will serve as rounds where I select a winner for each. Unlike many of the other comparisons that stick with a boring 1-point system, I will be using a 10-point must system to more accurately contrast these titles. Every round will have a winner that is awarded 10 points, with the loser also receiving points based on how competitive that round is. A 10-10 round is when it's too close to call, 10-9 is a super close round, 10-8 is a competitive yet still decisive round, and a 10-7 is a round when one competitor scores an unarguable victory. Hopefully that made sense, and if it doesn't, just keep watching. Before we begin, there will be spoilers for both Batman Arkham Knight and Marvel Spider-Man. To start things off, the first round is presentation. Having played both of these games somewhat recently, Marvel Spider-Man is definitely the more visually impressive title today, even on the base PS4, but there's more to presentation than just a game's resolution or frame rate. Spider-Man was released in 2018, receiving several updates and ports since that have really maximized the game in the looks department. Basically being left untouched since the initial release, Arkham Knight looks to be more than just 3 years older than Spider-Man, but both games still hold up perfectly well today when it comes to visual design. Similar to the visual design, the music for each game perfectly illustrates the contrasting vibe and atmosphere of these two universes. An important area that can make or break the immersion of fulfilling the roles of Batman and Spider-Man is voice acting. For many of us, Kevin Conroy is the voice of Batman, and so it will be difficult to hear anyone else in the future fill that role as well as he has. With that said, Yuri Lowenthal is truly amazing as Spider-Man, proving in just a game and a half that he is one of the best, if not the best actor to ever voice the webhead. Speaking of embodying the characters, both heroes have quite the assortment of iconic outfits to play around with, especially Spider-Man. While hardly ever seen, Bruce Wayne visually looks to be a good mashup of the comic books and animated series. Peter Parker, on the other hand, can't seem to quite decide what his face looks like. Comparing each game's presentational elements is a fairly even matchup, but I believe the difference maker here comes from Marvel Spider-Man's more cinematic approach to cutscenes and overall higher quality visuals, even on comparable hardware. Spider-Man starts this competition off with a 10-9. Next up, we have narrative. Both titles succeed in telling a story worthy of comic book panels. Batman Arkham Knight pulls familiar story threads from its source material, but in new and different ways. Jason Todd's complex relationship with Batman is nothing new, but the persona of the Arkham Knight is. While somewhat refreshing, this new twist on an old character was unfortunately rather predictable, even to the less dedicated Batman fan. Ultimately, the main conflict was actually Batman's internal struggle to keep the Joker at bay from consuming his consciousness, potentially creating the ultimate monster when marrying the two's attributes. Marvel Spider-Man tells an entirely new story with the familiar foundation of Peter Parker and Spider-Man's worlds colliding. Peter struggles to fight off his ever-growing list of supervillains while balancing the many obligations of his personal life. The roller coaster ride that Spider-Man experiences during the over-the-top crime-fighting sequences is always grounded by his personal desire to do what is right and help others. These authentic traits help add weight to Peter's trauma of losing both his aunt and mentor. Between the two games, Arkham Knight has the more interesting cast of personalities, while Spider-Man's characters, villains included, are more relatable as a whole. Both narratives fall victim to feeling rushed in certain key moments, while still pulling off an engaging story overall. This is another close round to call considering how well crafted each of these stories are, but with Arkham Knight's big twist falling somewhat flat and Spider-Man's characters being more relatable, the Spider expands his lead with another 10-9. Round 3 is comparing these two titles' in-game worlds. Both Batman and Spider-Man's identities are very rooted in their respective cities of New York and Gotham. Gotham is a completely fictional city, drawing inspiration from various real-world big cities such as New York and Chicago. Not being tied down to any particular source material, this Gotham City creates its own identity with a unique mixture of Gothic architecture, vertical boroughs, neon lights, and lots of rain. Contrasting to Gotham is Marvel's Spider-Man's recreation of New York City. Being based on a real place, this New York does a great job of portraying the real city's atmosphere and look, while being just different enough to come up with its own identity. Both cities have style and presence to the point of becoming their own characters within the story. While Gotham City may feel like a bit of a lost cause to fight for in contrast to Spider-Man's New York, it often felt like there was more to discover. This New York City may not feel like it has as many secrets hidden beneath the surface, but it successfully pulls off the wow factor that comes with capturing the essence of a real place many players have either seen or been to. This round is too close to call due to both locations excelling at their respective approaches to bring each in-game world to life. What's your preference? Round 4 is side content. With both titles being open world games, what are you as the player doing between main story beats or after the credits have rolled? Both titles are packed full of stuff to do, from optional side missions to challenges to collectibles and random encounters. I'm personally not big into collectibles myself, but both games offer their unique take between the Riddler trophies and the NYC backpacks. Marvel Spider-Man has several side missions that successfully make the player feel like a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that's looking out for New York's residents both big and small. Arkham Knight, on the other hand, offers a much larger selection of varied subplots to engage with. The side missions on display here are often as interesting as the main missions, ranging from saving firefighters to solving a series of murders to stopping bank heists and even investigating recent reports of a giant Batman. There's a lot of fresh content to consume. Once you get past the fact that all of this supposedly takes place in a single night, it's clear that Batman Arkham Knight has the more interesting and engaging side content. Both games have you doing repetitive tasks at times, but in Arkham Knight these reoccurring events seem to be actually building towards something. It's not that being Spider-Man isn't fun, because it is, but when it comes to both of these titles' side content, I'd rather be the world's greatest detective. The decisiveness of this round makes Batman the winner with a 10-8, which ties things up heading into round 5. An often undervalued yet crucial aspect of any good open world game is traversal. This is an area where both games are outstanding. Like the previous titles, Batman can grab onto almost any ledge in sight with his grapple hook, while complemented by his cape being useful beyond just the cool factor. Gliding feels great between its nuanced controls and range. After learning a few useful details, it more or less becomes full-on flying. Spider-Man can't fly, but between swinging and crawling in the Big Apple, you would never need to. Both characters are quite adept parkour artists, but Peter's abilities extend beyond just horizontal surfaces, being able to run and crawl up the side of buildings. When it comes to web swinging, what is there to say that hasn't already been said better? It's amazing to feel Peter's weight and momentum shift from one swing to another as his webs attach to various focal points on buildings and surfaces. The physical controls quickly fade into the back of players' minds as they start to really feel like Spider-Man. Batman's combination of grappling and gliding also has a special flow to it, but unsurprisingly it feels just a little less dynamic. One thing going for the Cape Crusader, however, is he recently got his Bat driver's license. The Batmobile is a lot of fun between battles, jumps, and drifting into destructible objects. For many, the implementation of the Batmobile was a bit overused, but it's hard to deny how great of a vehicle it is for maneuvering through Gotham streets. With all that said though, there's just an unmatched feeling of freedom that never loses its sense of engagement in Spider-Man's traversal system. In most comparisons, Batman Arkham Knight would take the W here, but in today's competition, Spider-Man edges out the victory for this round. For the second to last round, we have Stealth. These two titles have some similarities but are quite different here. Spider-Man often approaches stealth with a heavy emphasis on waiting to strike his prey from above. Most takedowns come from webbing up or quietly sneaking up on enemies. In most stealth instances, the player can always resort back to hand-to-hand combat if needed, while in Arkham Knight, Batman is much more vulnerable to incoming fire. Batman often resorts to stealth out of necessity, which is where many of his gadgets shine. With an assortment of explosives, batarangs, environmental hazards, and enemy manipulation, there's a lot of depth to engage with here when playing as Batman, especially when you take into consideration the extra emphasis on verticality with hidden walls, vents, and higher ground. Arkham Knight's stealth sections ask more of the player while also giving more back. Crawling along the ceiling and nabbing up a bad guy into your web as Spider-Man is fun throughout the entire runtime of the game, but is definitely not as entertaining as methodically messing with thugs one by one. Marvel Spider-Man's stealth sections feel like checkers, while the stealth in Batman Arkham Knight feels like chess, making it the winner this round with a 10-8. This puts the Bat ahead by 1 point heading into our final round. The final round is combat. Both titles center their combat systems around enemy management. Outside of boss battles, most individual enemies are a walk in the park when faced one-on-one. Add in a wide array of different enemy types that each offers their own threats and specific weaknesses, and things get interesting rather quick. Like the prior games in the series, Arkham Knight's combat feels empowering yet involved, brutal yet efficient. Attacking and dodging feels great, while the glue holding everything together is the counter button. Being the third mainline game in the series, there is more depth here beyond that, but those are the fundamentals that this amazing system is built on. The creators of Marvel Spider-Man seem to also agree with me, taking a lot of inspiration from the Arkham series combat. While very similar, there are a few fundamental changes to make this system more appropriate to Spider-Man's attributes and abilities. Counters are swapped out for web zips while putting a greater emphasis on dodging and moving. Batman is looking to counter his opponent's attacks, while Spider-Man is looking to outmaneuver their aggression. Both titles have their fair share of enemy variety and quality. Compared to stealth sections, many of Peter's gadgets are more useful here in combat between various types of webs and creative distractions. Another aspect of Spider-Man's approach to combat that differs over Batman is his greater reliance on range attacks and zips, being both crucial to success. I feel it's important to give respect to Rocksteady for being one of the first studios to master this type of combat, while I have to give the nod here to Spider-Man for improving upon the rock-solid foundations. Because of that, I am ultimately giving this close round to Spider-Man with a 10-9, which ends this competition in a draw. Maybe not the decisive outcome you're looking for, but I feel it was appropriate considering the outstanding quality of these two titles. Taking a step back, it seems to me that Marvel Spider-Man was able to surpass Arkham Knight when it came to combat and traversal, while Arkham Knight asserted its dominance in somewhat neglected areas of Marvel Spider-Man like side content and stealth. Marvel Spider-Man seems to be the better game to mainline with its excellent story, traversal, and combat, while Batman feels to be the better experience if you're looking to immerse yourself into a world and 100% it. I would definitely recommend both of these games to anyone who is even remotely interested. Before you ask, I know most fans regard City as the pinnacle of the Arkham games, which would be an interesting competition. I thought Knight made more sense since developers were working with similar constraints, closer to an apples to apples. Without doing a full-on comparison for a game I haven't played in almost 10 years, from what I remember, City had the better story, but Knight's gameplay seems to take things to the next level, at least outside of the overutilization of the Batmobile. Neither here nor there. If you like this video, please leave me a comment and a like. Lastly, if you could also do me a favor and check out a couple of my other videos to see if you would consider subscribing, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and until next time, see ya.